Welcome to 74 Escapes new podcast series Breaking Bread with Vera Loulou. I'm Vera, and I will take you on a gastronomic journey to explore food as an expression of cultural identity. I'll be hosting chefs and industry professionals from all over the world to discuss everything about this art form that really nourishes our souls. Let's start. On this episode of Breaking Bread with Vera Loulou, I have the honor to be speaking with Tom Aikens. Tom is one of the most creative chefs in Britain and the youngest to win 2 Michelin-stars at the age of 26. Raised in Norfolk, he grew up in a house with attention and infinite pleasure for food and a garden, baking at the age of 8, making jams and chutneys. An already impressive career that includes time spent for Pierre Kaufman and Joël Robuchon. He went on as the head chef at Pierre for 5 years. His latest restaurant news is his return to fine dining that is a unique and intimate dining journey. And today, I'm pleased to be speaking with Tom. Chef Tom, how are you doing, mate?
Very well, very well. Nice to be with you on here. So, yeah, it's extraordinary times. May I just add that?
Chef, what was it like growing up in Norfolk? I grew up in Moscow in much colder climates, but my grandmother had massive garden where she was growing vegetables and fruits. And this was no irrigation system back then. So she was carrying a big wooden stick with a big buckets of water to water everything from a pond to, so it was really fascinating. And she was making jams and pickles and growing potatoes. And because the climates are so cold, so when she was growing strawberries, the scarecrows would come. So she would put like a something to. It was really a fun experience. Up until her 70s, she didn't want to give it up. So it's quite fascinating. So tell me what it was like growing up with vegetable garden.
Where we lived in Norfolk, we were right in the middle of the countryside. So and my mother was a very sort of keen gardener as well as being a cook, and we basically had the luxury of having fresh vegetables every day, and she was very much into seasonal cooking. And so again, we learned at a very young age what seasonality was. So we weren't eating strawberries or asparagus in the winter, and so everything was really thought through properly. And so once she could see that we were sort of interested in the gardening, apart from doing all the weeding and all the boring stuff, and she could see that we're a little bit more interested in what to do with all the vegetables and the fruits that we picked. She kind of then took us into the kitchen and just gave us some very simple things to do, and then we kind of got a little bit more confident. And apart from obviously doing cakes and things that are very little bit more easy to do, we were sort of helping cooking the family meal and things like this. And then we also had a part of the vegetable garden as well, where we started growing all our own things as well. So it kind of took off from there, really. And my father was in the wine business, so he had a wine shop, and then also importing wine from Europe and France. And so we were also, as a family, we were doing a lot of traveling throughout France, mainly sort of in central France and to the south a little bit. But that also sort of gave me a taste, for good food.
You have a twin brother, so what is he up to these days? What's his career like?
So my twin brother is in the USA, and he and I sort of had different paths because at some point, a long time ago, when we were 23 or whatever, I was then starting to work with Joël Robuchon in Paris, and I'd only been there sort of 6-8 weeks, and he came and visited me with the parents. And we had always promised each other, when we were sort of, teenagers, 13, 14, 15, 16, that we would do a restaurant together. That would be our thing. And because it would be quite cool, 2 twins and everything. And then he told me when he came to Paris that he didn't want to do a restaurant with me, and that he was going to go to the US. And I was like, heartbroken, I was in tears. Say again?
And for what reason?
Well, just because he wanted to go, to the States, and he'd been offered something there. And so he went off to the States, and I was just like, well, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to do my own thing. And then basically, yeah, we kind of then had, two separate paths. So he's been pretty much, since we're 23 in the States, and he's worked all over in the States. I mean, he's been, right up north near the Canadian border and sort of Lake Placid in a beautiful lodge up there. And then he went to Manhattan. Then he went to Philadelphia. Then he went back to New York. And then now he's back in Washington. And now he's running his own sort of restaurants there. They're more casual restaurants. So he's pretty settled. And the only thing is, he's now got kids. So I kind of tease him a little bit. I say, like, you've got to be careful because eventually you're going to have American kids. Yeah. So I don't think you're going to want that, sort of bratty American children. So
that two twins separated went on to do, food, but at different countries.
I know. Yeah, it's bizarre. It is. But I mean, we had some, some good time together in the UK. When we left Norfolk, we came to London when we were 18. So, we lived together for, the best part of, 5 years. And then he came over, a few times and worked with me because when he was getting his sort of green card and everything. So he came back to the UK for a couple of years. And then he went back. But I hope, fingers crossed, eventually we will do something together. I mean, that's kind of what we would both love to do. It'll probably be something in the States for sure, because I think the appeal would be more there. So we're still hopeful that we can do something. Yeah.
But we'd love to have you here. But although I think UK has much better produce, I dream of the day I move back and have my Scottish langoustines. And it's such a rich country. I mean, France is right there. It's just proximity to everything is just fantastic. It's really dreamy. So tell me about your love for baking. You started to bake at 8 years.
Yeah.
8, yeah. So
I mean,
fantastic baker, correct?
Say again?
Your mom was a great baker.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, and no, I think for a lot of kids, I think it's probably the first port of call is doing something sweet, and it's easy. You put in the mixer, and you make a cake, and you progress from there. And I think it's always a nice place to start. And I think kids particularly. They always love, eating the raw cake mix and things like that, as I did. And then we slowly progressed, sort of, cooking in the kitchen as well. And even, I have 2 kids. They are now 6 and 9, and they're the same. They don't want to really do anything savory. It's just, desserts or puddings or cakes or biscuits, and that's it. But hopefully it will progress into savory at some point.
So coming from a Russian background, we really have affections with chutneys and jams. I mean, that's all Russians do. And I remember doing strawberry jams and cherries and peanut cherries. What are your favorites? Do you still make jams?
Oh yeah, no, I do, definitely. I know, I love jams. So I do pretty much every, when there is a season of obviously different fruits, I always make the jam. So be it blackberry or strawberry, raspberry, particularly
gooseberries.
Yeah, particularly if you can get, wild fruits. So like a wild blackberry, the flavor and the taste is so much better than obviously, shop bought, because they just have this sort of real depth of sort of natural taste to them. And also, strawberries or marmalade. I love marmalade. It's quite a British thing. And they'll be in season, very, very soon. So sort of end of December, beginning of January, you'll start to get your several oranges. And then that's when, the Brits go and make their marmalade for the year.
Personally love marmalade, but I'm a savory kind of person. So when I have foie gras, I have to have my marmalade. So it has to be like a salty, sweet contrast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my go-to, but
It's a
and
good
when I
combo.
lived in Japan, we were doing like a rose petal jam, which
Oh,
is
no.
cool. I still, I mean, I now when I buy roses and when they die, I make a rose petal jam.
Nice.
Yeah. So as I understood, you spent your holidays in France. I mean, which exposed you to French cuisine and proximity to
Mm.
this so close. But like, tell me about the experiences impacted you and what you loved the most.
Well, it was, I guess when we were sort of, I think 11, we really started going on holidays to France, and we did, quite a lot throughout the Auvergne, which is in the central France. And my father, because of his trips, he would use that as his sort of hub to go then to different wine regions. So eventually, we bought a house down there in the Auvergne, and then we would go there a lot. Easter breaks, summer holidays, Christmas, everything. And it was just so beautiful because we were literally like in a tiny little hamlet, a village. There was just like us and four other houses, and two of them were farmers. One was a sort of market gardener, and then the other person was retired. So we had pretty much every other morning fresh milk from the farmer, and then fresh vegetables when we wanted. And it's kind of a very simple life, but very nice. And
The beauty of France, it's you can go to the smallest village and have the best food.
yeah, totally.
That's the amazing, and you can have amazing butchers and cheeses and have a good wine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
such
so it was really, really pleasant times. And summer holidays would be, we'd be there for like 6 weeks and 8 weeks. So it was great. And then and yeah, as I said, sort of, that sort of life in France as a child definitely, gave me an insight into, French cooking and everything. And we, on coming back from a skiing holiday with my parents, we literally had we had a stop on the way. Can't remember which place it was, but anyway, we had I would say our first proper sort of Michelin dining experience. And my father, he always takes or gets recommendations, from different growers or suppliers of where to stop, because he obviously was driving all the time. And anyway, he put us into this hotel, and he didn't know at all that it was quite a swish hotel with a Michelin star and everything. So this was then 92, no, sorry, 82, 82, 83. So it's like when Nouvelle Cuisine was all the rage. And I still very much remember, the meal that me and my brother had, because it was just, very, very small portions, and everything was very precise. My mother and father were having, foie gras and frog's legs and snails and veal and everything. So it was very interesting.
That's beautiful. Um, wow. So it's tell me about your experience with Pierre Kaufman. It's he's such an inspiration. So what was it like working for him?
So yeah, I mean, out of the two chefs, well, out of all the chefs that I worked with, I would say, Pierre Kaufman and Joel Robuchon were probably the two that most influenced me, and both very, very different in terms of styles and tastes and
Very different.
cooking ability and everything. So Pierre Kaufman is very much, because he was from Gascony, so his dishes were very hearty. They had a lot of depth of flavor.
Oh, Gascony.
Yeah, how are you?
Yes, and that's why I love working with Pascal. It was like
Okay.
cool experience.
So it was, yeah, his food was, was very simple, but it had a lot of flavor. It was very, very simply put together. It wasn't, particularly so creative, but
But it's pure and
yeah,
beautiful. It's simple.
exactly.
That's why I love
Simple, great produce all the time.
always.
And he was a very good, he was a very good hands-on teacher. So he taught us a lot, and he made sure that everyone, really worked hard. That's for sure. He was very much a hard taskmaster and very vocal in how he wanted things all the time. So it wasn't a quiet kitchen, that's for sure. But as I said, he's very good at getting, the absolute best flavor out of everything. And then Joel Robuchon was
Come on.
Completely different. So I worked at the Avenue Poincaré, the 3-star there, and again, super amazing, technician in terms of his dishes. Very, very, as you know, very, very creative. Very intricate in terms of the level of detail on each dish. Some processes and steps would just take 5 minutes for one dish, which is just crazy. And no expense spared whatsoever on getting the absolute best of the best produce. I mean, it was just, it was phenomenal. The level of standards that he really put us through was incredible. And I would say, both of them were very hard to work for. But I would say, in terms of actual physical hours, Joel Robuchon was the toughest. I mean, we'd be working 20 hours a day, like nonstop. So it was tough, but you learned, you obviously learned a lot. And it was just an amazing experience to be in the kitchen, with him.
I must say I got a little bit of Pierre Kaufman vibes from when I was working for Pascal. It was only maybe a month and a half, but it was really, really fun. And he was such a great teacher, and he was just a beautiful human being and a great chef. And
Mm-hmm.
I really felt the most inspired when I worked with him. So
Yeah.
I did feel a lot what you were just talking about from Pascal.
Mm.
And you were the youngest chef to get to Michelin-stars in UK
Yeah.
in Inglaterra. So tell me, talk about it, what it was like. You were there for 5 years.
Yeah. So basically, when I was what was I 21, when I went and worked. Sorry, 22 when I went and worked at Pierre first as like a chef de partie. And then I was promoted to, sous chef after, not even a year. And then after that, I went and worked. I was there for just over a year, and then I went and worked someone else. And then I went when I was, I guess, 20. When was I? 24, 20? Yeah, 24. I then went to work with Joel Robuchon, and that's how. So basically, the story is that when I was going to work with Joel Robuchon, it was the chef, the old chef from Pied à Terre, who had worked with him like 15 years before, had got me, a job with him. So when I was there, I stayed with Joel Robuchon for like a year, and then I went to work for another chef, Gérard Boyer, at acclaimed in Reims, and
My
when I
favorite now.
say again.
It's my favorite.
Ah. When I was there, so I then, just turned 25. I had a call from the restaurant manager at Pied à Terre saying that the chef Richard, he was leaving. Would I be interested in, in taking over?
And you had to leave France. You have to leave Paris.
Yeah. Well, I was in
Paris.
I was in Reims then in Champagne. So I basically I'd almost been there a year, or 3/4 of a year. And anyway, so I said, look, I'm going to definitely take that, position, because you never get offered anything like that. So
And you're like, wow, but I have to leave France, which I love.
yeah, that was the downside. That was the downside.
Oh.
So when I took over, I kind of had a sort of two-week sort of layover with himself and me, and then I was in in the kitchen doing my menus and dishes and everything. And so we had told Michelin that that I was coming in, Richard was leaving, and so we had, in terms of me coming in and him leaving, we had a full year, because basically the guide then came out in end of January. So I basically came in at the end of January. They already kept the 2 stars. So I then had another, 10 months to prove myself. And I thought, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to lose 1 star, definitely, if not probably 2, because I'm an unknown, nobody knows me. and normally, obviously, to get 2 stars, it takes, you know, a number of years, you know. Anyway, so I went in the kitchen, so, you know, and it was funny because literally the chef had told me, oh, you know, the guys in the kitchen, they're all going to stay with you, don't worry. But literally after, like, you know, week 2, half of the team had gone because they didn't want to work with me because I was like an unknown. And then, you know, it just literally was for the first 6 months, there was like me and 2 other chefs, and that was it. So it was just hell. We were again,
Did very well in the kitchen.
yeah, it was tough because we were again doing, you know, 20 hours a day. It was just ridiculous. So anyway, so eventually when, you know, when the guide came out, yeah, the good news was that I kept both stars. So I kept the 2 stars. And, you know, I was not expecting it. The restaurant manager wasn't. I don't think anyone was expecting it. So, you know, it was a complete bloody surprise that happened. And so, yeah, so I was then the youngest ever.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's really interesting because London was never known for its food until recently. I feel like London has become such a culinary destination.
Mm.
Having lived in all over the world, in Japan and Tokyo and Paris, I really come to London and I'm so excited. There's such a wide range of cuisines, and personally, you know, on a Bloody Sunday, I'll have to go to Quo Vadis and having like an eel sandwich and oysters and a kidney pie. But I really feel like you, well, you guys, you stepped it up. It's just incredible.
Yeah, no,
Japanese,
Yeah, London is a great city. I mean, I think in terms of the diversity of restaurants and in terms of cuisines and everything, it's, you know, it's really good. It is good.
I dream and sleep, and I mean, we're in Corona, but first trip I can take, I'm gonna, you know, go back to London, and it's I honestly have the best food memories there, and working with Pascal, it's just such a beautiful journey, and like bravo. It's the, you know, you have langoustes from Scotland, you're so close to France,
Yeah.
and you eat so well, you can actually eat so well. You have beautiful Iranian cuisines, you know, and Italian and everything. I think it's, to me, it's one of the most melting pots. Even if New York is nowhere near close, it's just wonderful. It's can't wait to
Yeah,
go back.
we're spoiled. We're definitely spoiled. It's nice.
So, what are your go-tos in London? Like, what do you like to eat when you don't cook? Tell me, are you bangers and mash kind of guy? Do you like what's
I,
do you like sushi? What do you love to eat?
Well, I would say, you know, in terms of food that I enjoy the most is obviously more simple cooking, because when you're cooking kind of, you know, fine dining and everything, it's probably the last thing you want to eat. And my go-to dish would always be, you know, a good roast chicken, to be honest. I would say that I've mastered and cracked the best roast chicken, although it is very chefy in the way that it's prepared. You know, it's brined, it's air dried, it's slow cooked. You know, it's like a bloody 2-day operation.
Of course,
But,
you have to prepare for it. So I
yeah.
personally like my chicken supreme, and I put it on the rack and I put salt on it and I ate it for like a few days, and then, you know, the rest is history. But it can be so delicious. It's such a comfort food. Chicken supreme with beans or even roasties. It's like,
Yeah. No.
what is your philosophy?
So for me, it's, you know, I think out of you know, all the restaurants that I've, you know, ran and obviously operate, you know, it's key, you know, the sort of integrity of what we do is about, you know, seasonality, and, you know, everything that we do is very authentic and pure. And I think, you know, the way that I now sort of look at food, and the way that Muse as well has come about, is that I think for people, you know, when they go out to a restaurant, you know, because in London, as you quite rightly said, you know, the level is very, very high. You know, they're very consistent, I think, in terms of food and service, decor. So it's very difficult now to sort of, I guess, put your head above everyone else. And so when I was thinking about this, you know, and also restaurants that I've been to and what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy is like, when you go out, there is always something, hopefully, that you will remember. And obviously, if you haven't remembered, then obviously it hasn't been all that great. And so, even when I get asked, like restaurants that I've been to, you know, that have been, you know, quite a few, but like it's always only a handful that you can kind of really remember. And so I was thinking about it. So then why don't you try and then recreate for people more memories or memorable moments in their meal where they can then at least have lots of memories that they can attach to their time of coming into Muse. So as I was thinking this, and this has got to be a whole journey from when they come in and then when they leave, and literally bombarding them with like hopefully photographic memorable things. So for instance, like, you know, when they come in, you know, the greeting to the sitting down to having a menu. And again, the menu has always typically been the same. It's a card, a book, you open it and you have your dishes and da da da. You read your menu, whatever it is, roast scallops of this and that, and or, you know, beef fillet with morels and spinach, and it's kind of boring. So
There's a story to it.
yeah, so so first off with the menu, I kind of did a pop-up. So I got a guy who makes basically pop-ups in children's books to do a pop-up of our house, the Muse, because it's on a corner. So that pops up, which is very different. And then you have the two menus on either side of the book. And then, you know, throughout obviously the meal, they have their menu. But again, on the menu, I don't tell them what it is. It's just 3 ingredients. And then with each dish, there's a story, rather than giving details about how it's cooked, how it's prepared, what it's served with. It's an authentic, true to life story or experience that I've had. Or it could be something about a particular ingredient, you know, that I'm telling a story about. So that way it relates obviously a bit more personality. It's a bit more thought, it's a bit more detail. And I think overall, in terms of, as I said, these memories of giving people, by the end that they leave, they'll have hopefully quite a few things that they've got in their head that have gone, wow, that's amazing, da, 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 da. And then again, lastly, when they leave, we then now give them this little box of sort of memorable things. So they get this little bottle of a nightcap. So it's like it's an infused spirit. So it'll be the vodka based or gin based. I do, yeah. And so I do a lot of, you know, infusions with wild forage things. And so they have one of those when they go home. And then in the morning, there's two little brioche sort of cakes that they have for breakfast, and then 2 homemade tea infusions as well, and then a pot of jam. And then lastly, they have this little disc with Muse written on it, and it's basically it's a seeded paper with either like a vegetable in it, vegetable seeds, or wildflower seeds, and it just says, you know, plant me on it. So as I said, there's all these things that, you know, that will take them on a bit more of a, you know, a fun journey.
This is so delicious. I mean, can I teleport now? And by the way, I think when I was working in Japan, because I worked at Den for maybe a month for Zai Hasegawa, and the beauty and the love and how they approached customers was so similar. It's at the card, it's a journey. When you walk out, there's always a little gift. There's always, when you leave the restaurant, the entire team walks you out and puts you in a cab, or it's such a beautiful way of just meeting and greeting the guest, and you know they're going to be back. It's just such a attention to customer.
Yeah.
Above all, it's not like it's just such a different philosophy, and I find it so beautiful. And the fact that you forage, and when do you go forage? Can I go foraging? I love it. So when you go foraging in London, do you go to like? What do
Well,
you?
I have a place outside of London in Oxfordshire, and I had that before the first lockdown. So, and where we are, it's literally on a farm as well. So you're literally out in,
Shabby.
so you're out in the fields and the wild. So there's literally like everything there. You know, blackberries and crab apples and rose hips and hawthorns and, you know, everything else. So I was, you know, literally in the lockdown, I was like foraging pretty much every other day. So it was quite good fun. Picking wild roses, you know, for making syrups and elderflower and elderberries and, you know,
Elderflower is my personal favorite.
yeah.
Number
Yeah.
one, and then number two is sea buckthorn, which I'm not sure
Yeah.
if in the UK, but in Russia we're
No,
famous.
we have sea buckthorn here.
You
Definitely.
do?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think my Russian background speaks for it, but sea buckthorn tea and the jams and just there are
Yeah.
certain ingredients that I miss when I'm here that I'm just dying for, and sea buckthorn and gooseberries and all these things, it just makes me want to move back. just, just for that stuff, I'm like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, yeah.
All these beautiful things aside, how do you see COVID impacting restaurants, and how do you see yourself as a fantastic chef moving on or changing, or what's the structure? What are you thinking as an artist? Because as an artist you have to progress and
Mhm.
rethink whatever the circumstances. So what's your take on that?
So I think, listen, you know, it was obviously completely, you know, a shot from the blue, and everyone was totally not expecting anything like this. And the year has just, you know, gone by so quickly. But I think, you know, the one thing that I would say that has always, you know, is always a true, like particularly in London, you know, and outside of London, the way that, you know, obviously people unite together, you know, when there are difficulties, and that was, you know, that was amazing to see. Like, you know, everyone was helping, obviously you know, the NHS and the nurses, and doing things for them and raising money, and so that was, you know, there was a great sort of spirit behind that. And I think, you know, the sort of, yes, the downside obviously to not only obviously loss of death, but I think, you know, the way that it's affected, you know, many businesses has obviously been, you know, really bad and terrible, you know, in the UK overall. People obviously lost their restaurants and lost livelihoods and everything. So I think, you know, it's not going to be even over, as we know. But I think those that are managing to, you know, to keep going, it's hard because you just don't know, as I said, when this is all gonna, you know, when this is all going to end and then to finish. And, you know, you kind of reassess a lot of things in terms of how you can hopefully, you know, change your business or improve it to, you know, to help others, or to, you know, a lot of people did their, you know, delivery home service and things like that, which we did as well for, you know, for a while. But I think the sort of, you know, the true aspect of actually, you know, going to a restaurant, you know, and being able to sit down and enjoy and be free from all the worries is still a long way away, I think. And I think, you know, the next obviously phase in this, you know, in the UK and obviously where I am in London, you know, is increasingly difficult, because I don't think we can really see a sort of true end, you know, to this until obviously all the vaccine has been taken up and in, and you know, but until then, it's still very much a lot of, you know, a lot of question marks.
So after this is over, let's say, what would be the first place you would go?
Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, I'm supposedly got 3 new projects that I'm supposed to be doing, and they're all in different countries all over the world. So one is where you have been, in Tokyo. So I'm supposed to be doing a project in Tokyo, doing one in Jakarta, and then one in Doha as well.
Yeah,
So
I heard about that.
so it's it's obviously tricky to be able to do these, and we're kind of obviously postponed them from this year, and now going into 2021. It's even still difficult to see when we're going to make that happen, because Tokyo one was supposed to be in August or October, and now I think it's going to be March or April. The one in Doha is also April, and even the one in Jakarta is also April as well. So I think that they're all going to clash.
I hope for you for the best, but I mean, in the meantime, my go-to in February is my cherry blossoms. I get a bunch and I put them all over the house, and this way I feel like I'm in Japan, and I miss it so much. It's so wonderful.
Wow.
I miss traveling. It's long as I honestly haven't gotten out of country, and I think maybe you could do something like Tom's Jams, Tom's
Yeah,
Chutneys.
absolutely, definitely, definitely.
And Chef, it was so lovely to speak with you. What an honor, and thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
See
Absolute
you
pleasure.
maybe in spring or summer or
Yeah, who knows?
possible when this lifts and everybody's happy and healthy and we can have a glass of Guinness and
Exactly.
shepherd's pie or something, like a game, like
Something-
a beautiful, beautiful quail.
I
Thank you
know.
so much for your time and being a part of Breaking Bread with Vera Loulou.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.